All right, thank you for joining us. This is for the fold3 database, one of our genealogy resources here at the Plano Public Library's Genealogy Center in the lower level Haggard Library. Of course, you can access this through any of the public computers at any of the libraries, any of the 5 locations, and you can also access this one through our online resources remotely from home if you wish. So, oops, there we go. So tonight, we're just going to go through and I'm going to provide an introduction for fold3, and we're going to learn some, hopefully, learn some basic site navigation. You can't break it. You're not going to screw it up, but it's real easy to go down a rabbit hole and explore a whole lot of stuff. You'll be amazed. And I would probably suggest as my pro tip is to go down that rabbit hole, enjoy, explore, play with it, and then start afresh for looking for family, doing your research, but just play with it, kind of get familiar with the tool and the resources. And it's really, really cool. And there's a lot of different sections, have a host of information that's hopefully will meet some of your research needs. So there's a number of ways to find this database. And if you happen to have the Plano Public Library's catalog bookmarked, you can access it real simply by selecting the Research and Learn databases from the online resources. It's just down there in that lower right-hand column. And you click on that and it'll take you through. Or you can access it by going to the city's website, www.plano.gov, selecting the library tab, and then you can scroll down and till you find the research and learn from there. Or you can, from that library tab, you can select the Genealogy Center under the visit. So multiple pathways get you to the same objective. And that'll, under the visit, it'll bring you up a list and you can select the Genealogy Center. So many paths lead to fold3. I just realized this is a slightly older screenshot, but still from the Research and Learn database list. You can either scroll down to the icon or you can select on this left-hand list there, genealogy and history. That'll get you to our genealogy resources. And ultimately get you to fold3. So what exactly is fold3? Well, we know it has something to do with military records. Hopefully that's why you're here. But fold3 provides a growing collection of U.S. military records, includes stories, photos, personal documents of the men and women who served from the Revolutionary War onward. And the collection began in 1999 as an iArchives was their name. It was a digitized collection of historical newspapers and archive materials from institutions across the U.S. And iArchives, they started realizing, hey, there's value to creating an online repository of original source documents. And in January 2007, they launched footnote.com, and it had over 5 million original documents. And it was a go-to place for historical document research, especially the military research. And eventually, in October of 2010, Ancestry.com purchased iArchives, including Footnote. And then Footnote was rebranded as fold3 in August 2011. And that was with the explicit objective of becoming the premier website for military records. And you may wonder, so why fold3? What's in the name? Well, Fold3 name, as it states on their site, comes from a traditional flag folding ceremony where the third fold is made in honor and remembrance of veterans who served in defense of their country and to maintain peace throughout the world. Simple as that. Now, you may see, in addition to the US, you've got tabs across this line for Australia, Canada, New Zealand, and United Kingdom. So you've got some other access to a few other records from some countries, foreign allies for the US, but we're going to start with the US and we're going to look at the War of 1812, the US records. And if you click on that, that'll open up this record, and we're going to dive into this in a little bit more detail in a moment. I'm just kind of giving you a cursory tutorial here and kind of how things work. They all are similar pathways. But if you click on the War of 1812, like I showed on the last screen, you bring up this page and it provides a brief historical overview of the conflict. It also provides some links to publications, and across the top, they usually have a, a featured publications list. And then there's a description tab all across the top. And you, of course, can't see my cursor moving there. I don't have a pointer. Or do I? No, I don't have a pointer. I'm sorry. Um, but you have the overview, the publications, and then you have a description tab, and that provides a little bit more detailed history of the conflict. It might, depending on what you have selected, it may um, point you to some unit regiment histories. It may point you to some battle information, historical, almost encyclopedic, kind of gives you some context for battles in a conflict or the overall conflict itself. And it gives you a lot of potential information that you can find as you delve into that. You could, of course, in that search where it has a search field that says people, records, places, and dates, of course, you could just plug in any of those things. And we'll go through some examples in a moment. But you could just take a stab, put in a family's name, or if you're looking for, you know, dates and places, you could as well. Uh-oh, my screen has frozen. That's no bueno. Aha. So now I'm going to jump into the fold3. So pardon me while I change screens momentarily. If it will let me. Okay. Hopefully you're seeing the fold3. I've already entered in through one of the pathways to access through our online resources through the library. Hopefully I'm seeing that. Is that correct, Jess?
Yep, it looks good.
All right, cool. Um, so this is what you're presented with when you log into fold3. Real simple, clean page. Across here at the top, you've got the search and browse, which basically looks like this. But I'm going to go back. And if you scroll down, you've got, as we said, we've got the US, and we've got Australia, Canada, New Zealand, United Kingdom. And as they say here at the top, they've got over 640 million records. That's a lot of records. As you scroll through here, they've got, because we've highlighted in the US tab, and that was the default. We've got a lot of different tabs here by conflict that the US was involved in. So it's all chronological here in the top line, left to right, drop down, so forth. If you keep going, you've got some more information where you can access information just browsing the military records by conflict. You've got that pathway. You've got a link here below that for original stories. So this is some collections of stories, maybe written letters, narratives that people wrote about their time in service, some photos, any personal documents, um, a lot of different resources. And then the base here where you can find a little bit more information, some overall about um, fold 3, as well as that statement I was telling you about of why the name. I'm going to run back up here and we're going to look um, at the War of 1812 and just kind of jump in. But first, I want to comment about something. Um, when it comes to the U.S. Civil War, as you can see, we've got the Civil War, and we also have it sections broken up: U.S. Civil War for the Union and U.S. Civil War for the Confederacy. So, if you happen to be looking for um, Confederate pension records, any kind of Confederate military documents, those are a little easier to find because they're all found together in the same repository, and by and large, they're 90 to 100% digitized. You're going to have a lot more success finding the Confederate records together as one repository. The Union pension records, those are held in collections throughout the many states and counties, so they're not as easy to find. And it's totally dependent upon the status of the various institutions' digitization or indexing uh, projects. You may find and open up as you're doing some searches or browsing some of the collections and see you may see a little symbol off to the side, 50%, 80%, 25%. That's referring to their progress in the digitizing of those records. So if it's 25%, they've only digitized 25% of those records and so forth. When it comes to World War One and World War Two and beyond records, so anything from World War One to current service records, there's not a lot of records available. You're going to stand a better chance to find um, your relative's service records for an earlier conflict, something older than World War One. There's just a lot more records, and there are still documents and information that are not yet publicly accessible. There's just a lot of stuff. Um, but keep in mind too that if you're looking for again the World War One through World War Two documents, and that, I forget how far it went. I forgot how far the records went, but there was a fire in a National Personnel Record Center in St. Louis, Missouri in July of 1973 that destroyed or damaged, they estimate 16 to 18 million uh, service personnel records. So, gonna have a hard time. Hopefully, at some point, some of the damaged ones will be um, processed through, and as I remember reading fairly recently, there was some consumed by the fire, but the majority of the damage was water damage and from fighting the fire. Hopefully, over time, they'll be able to reclaim some of the documents with new technologies. It's just going to be a long, slow, painstaking, expensive process. So don't hold your breath. Um, is the key to that story. Have some hope, but also don't be disappointed if you're not going to be able to find that. But you'll need to request the World War One to current service records, you'll need to request those through the National Archives and Records Administration, NARA. Um, that's going to be your next stop. But fold3 does have a lot of other ancillary military records and pieces of information that may be useful in filling in some other parts of the story. If you don't have the service record in totality because it was, destroyed, damaged, lost, you might be able to piece together some other um, clues to your relative story in service. We hope. Um, so we're going to select War of 1812. It's showing up here as 81 million plus records. That's a bunch of records. And as the example that we showed on the slide, you've got an overview here, and you can click on the continue reading. So you've got an overview of the War of 1812. A little nice historical article. It's got some links in here to some other information pages. Down towards the bottom, you have some links for, to see the soldiers eligible to apply for pensions and bounty land for their service. You got some links to more information. And as I had said, you've got the publications. So you've got a host of publications here that you can just browse. Or we'll go back up here to the overview, and we will plug in someone's record here, a name. Now you see for the War of 1812 here, the top result they show is 42 titles, over 81 million records. And then as you scroll down, let me draw your attention over to the left here. Sorry, let me do that real quick first. You've got a lot of different ways to refine your search. Let's say maybe you got too many records. This is not too bad. It's 484 results, but let's say it's possible you could put in a search, and I'll go back and do that. Oops, went too far. Went the wrong way. We'll do, oops, can't type. John Smith. As you would imagine, that yields a lot of results. That's over 9,000 plus results. That's a little bit harder to wade through than just that 400 and some odd from the first result. But you've got ways of refining your search through here. Maybe you wanted to look a little past the War of 1812. Maybe that wasn't what you were looking for. Maybe look in the U.S. Civil War. You can look specifically within publications. You can narrow it that way. Or you look for publication type. So you've got service records you could search. And that narrows it down to 831. Let's click on the see all. So here's the publication types. Casualty report. Maybe you found out, oh yes, my relative was, according to family tradition, was wounded in battle during this period. So with just 7 results, here are the 7 results. And you've got different volumes, so presumably different service personnel. Looks like this is all through a naval hospital though. And also curiously, this shows a child's record. I will look here for that. And then you've got actual record here. And you've got some ways where you can zoom in, make it more legible because sometimes that's handy. You can adjust the brightness and contrast. or sometimes they may have a page that's um, in landscape, but they scanned it in portrait, and you might need to rotate it to view it, or you can get it to pull full screen. I'm going to return to the name index. Oops. Here we go. And I'm curious. I forgot. I saw this before, but I forgot to look up what is a child record and see if it tells me. No, I was hoping it would give me a. See if it tells me. No, I was hoping it would give me a brief description, but I'm drawing a blank. I forgot to look that up. Of course, the one result I would pull up something that I forgot to look up. Sorry about that, y'all. So I'm going to go back. Let's say you could also take here in the top level, you could just take a stab and plug in a name here and see the gazillion results, which I will do. I will do just a broad search. So this family name brings up 120,000 records for the US, 17,000 records in the United Kingdom. Okay, so here we have some French records from 332 and some Canadian records. Let's see what all we've got here. So curiously, you have literally a collection of records from all over the world. That's a very curious one. So you can make your selections and just search there. If we go down, you also have city directories. That's one of the non-military records that you might be able to find. Um, Non-military records, you're going to find letters, journals, maybe some newspaper articles, photos, of course, maybe some maps, a variety of different things that are not specific military records, but might pertain or talk about the service person in um, some form or fashion. Also, a little census data as well. As we hear here, the publication types, let's see all. So it's got the newspaper, city directories, has some service records, muster rolls, casualty records, pensions, some war diaries, enlistments. So you got a lot of different, got some Native American records, unit histories, a lot of different things. So as you scroll through here, you can see a number of things for the Samuel Broome World War One British Army service record. You'll note, let's see, and you have a few little things to modify your search to include or exclude. But it'll tell you a lot of times you can discover the units that they served with, where those units might have been stationed. A lot of these records you might be able to determine their ranks, or in this case of Luke, we have their World War One draft registration. Birthplace, Texas. Clicking on that brings you up the record. There we go. Get that a little larger. So you can possibly find a little information. I always like it. They're to me they're a little similar to census information. You have a lot of depending on what census you're talking about, but you have a lot of the similar information. Plus a few additional things that might have something about their eye color, their build, um, their occupation, their trade. In this case, a farmer, um, whether they're married or single. Here we go. Eye color, color of hair. And sometimes you might, if they're married, you might have a spouse listed on their registration, draft registration card or enlistment card. But yes, any questions so far?
So I'm not seeing any questions in the chat right now. So if you do have
Oh,
a question, write it in. But I will say that someone did share trying to be helpful. A child record is probably a detail record, one child record per line on the page, just guessing. Um, so I wanted to share that.
okay.
And then we also got another helpful comment just sharing about the fire at NPRC.
Oh, excellent.
Yeah. And they shared a link to the US Department of Veteran Affairs, which talks about it. So I thought that was pretty cool in the chat. Just wanted to mention it.
Yes,
But I'm not
there's a
seeing any questions.
yes, there's a number of the even the NARA has a good page on their site um, that goes through the details of that fire and the status of a lot of the records and kind of what records were affected. So yes, it's well documented and it's an interesting read. Um, Unfortunately, from my perspective from family research, my relative grandparents, great grandparents that I wanted to research fall smack dab in the middle of that block of the alphabet that was affected by that. So uh, I'll have to use alternative means to piece together some service history and records. But I'll use that as an interesting segue here. Um, I knowing this, I did research my grandparent and grandfather, and discovered there were some medical records, some um, military hospital. I don't know if they were intake forms, but it was some discharge papers, notes from a military hospital where he had been injured, not in service, but he messed up his knee. One, he was in the hospital a couple of times. It just unfortunately, I guess, accident prone. But he fell out of a truck onto his knees. Um, Sounds like a big ouch. And he was in the hospital for that. But one of the discharge um, papers also talked about and mentioned these were not in the line of service. Old injury that was not in the line of service. It was an older injury from his teens that was just a chronic problem. They had all the, the medical language things there, but it fit with our family story. If he really messed up his knees playing football, of course, we're talking football in the early years, um, where they barely had a leather helmet and probably no shoulder pads to speak of. Uh, and Yes, he had football injury that gave him chronic arthritis in his knees, and that plagued him through his service um, in the army. So I was able to find those pieces of information, so you can kind of maybe come around from a different angle and attack your your research needs and find some other documentation supporting thing that helps kind of piece together um, some of that information. One of the pieces of information on that discharge document was it didn't provide a specific unit, but he was U.S. Army, but um, he was somehow attached to the U.S. Army Air Corps. Um, and I know he was a truck driver at some point in later life, and I believe he drove trucks during World War II, so a supply driver, but it was attached to a bombardment unit. So I don't know if he was attached. I mean, I'm sorry, not a bombardment, supply squadron. So I don't know if that was a supply squadron to the bomber units. It would take me a little bit more research, but it's kind of getting you enticingly in that area that corroborates the story that I remember he told um, to me as a child. So some interesting things. Um, I will also mention, let's see, where was it? Under the featured section, speaking of war stories, they do have this section, um, U.S. Civil War with 96 million plus records, where they've got a lot of documentation and things with the U.S. Civil War and a whole host of list of publications like regiment histories. And here's where I was talking about percentage complete. So here that's 99% complete. These are look by and large, they look 100% complete. Not too bad. Oh, here's one, the widow's pensions. Uh, it's only 22% complete. So they're digitizing, doing their best to can't talk, digitize as quickly as possible. Um, Millions of documents each year. So they're constantly adding to this collection. Of course, again, they give the whole description of the conflict. Um, some of these, yeah, here's the regiment histories. You can also explore the Civil War battles. And so they have each battle where they've got stories that attach to these battles, along with some battlefield maps. They do have some videos, obviously not period videos, but it's documentary information. Um, and then some more information links out to the American Battlefield Trust. And then a few little infographic with statistics from the that battle. And just some interesting little uh, things to collect. If you had a family member that fought, and you can piece together some of that information and find out what battles. I will also point out this was really cool. Um, U.S. medals. So you have this section that goes through and talks about all the different service medals that have been awarded. So you've got a lot of just keep scrolling and keep scrolling. Where it stops, I don't know that I've got to the bottom. I was still scrolling when I was checking on this before we started the class. If you click on this, let's see what it gives us. It just opens up and gives us a little bit more information about that. And looks like it may, see, where does that link us to? It doesn't link us to anything. But then you have some tabs here. You got the stories. You've got some facts. The gallery showing the medal itself and the ribbon bar um, that you would wear in different configurations of uniform. So that might be some interesting little things if you're curious about. You find out a family member had been awarded um, a service medal or had served in a particular campaign or theater. There's generally a medal, an award for that, or associated with that a particular campaign or theater of operation. Um, let's look at one of Australia. So they got World War One and World War Two records. You've got Canada with their conflicts here. New Zealand, a lot of the same thing. World War One, World War Two. United Kingdom, a few other things. Napoleonic Wars, Boxer Rebellion. Few different options to explore if you're researching in that area for a family member. I'm going to go over here to just see all publications. And you could just browse. This is what I was talking about, is just going down the rabbit hole and really exploring some things. So I'm going to go to the title collection, World War II, and each click that'll reshuffle your results, and you can just browse some things. So here's some unit histories. So that's 1943 to 40. So that was World War II through just post World War II. So you got some bomb group history. And under those histories, it looks like it's mission reports. It looks like the reports that they filed every morning with command. So you've got within that bomb group, you've got a number of different units, from the bomb squadrons themselves to reconnaissance, photo lab, a lot of support squadrons and units that make up the full bomb group. I'm going to look at let's see, we use this one. Aha, and see, here's is one I'm talking about, was scanned on the side, and there we go. You can kind of right side it up. So this was from December 1943. And you got an extract of that day's report, or maybe this was the morning report for the operation the day before. Don't know, haven't read it. Then you've got some different lists of service personnel involved, and yeah, that you could really go down the rabbit hole looking at this stuff. Are there any questions so far?
Yeah, we do have one question that
Oh,
came in. Do military records typically list parents or emergency contacts?
um, I'm going to say they might. I have not specifically seen them, although, like I had mentioned in the draft card, if the individual was married, it will list a spouse as a next of kin, or I guess would be their contact. Um, I'm assuming yes, but I don't have a specific, maybe yes, possibly, but I haven't seen, I don't have a specific example to say absolutely yes.
And We do have someone in the chat that added transport records have some of that information.
Oh, okay. There you go.
I love our attendees. They're so helpful.
Yes, yes. Each of us has a different experience and set of information to contribute to the whole. I love it. And we have a question about what does the military yearbook contain? Are you talking about like the yearbook that's almost like a college or high school yearbook? Is that what you're talking about? I I just want to make sure I'm understanding the question correctly. Um, give a moment for them to type. Oh, the last search I showed. Okay. I don't know how far back that would have been. Um, I don't know which search that was. Sorry. Um, military yearbooks from uh, yes, those are going to be a lot like a yearbook for a university or high school, if you will, to use the analogy. Um, a lot of times each unit. Oh, I was looking at the bomb group. Yeah. So if it was a bomb group yearbook, um, if you're in the Navy, it might be called a cruise book. Um, and they have a yearbook, an annual for that particular cruise for that ship or that particular unit. In this case, the bomb group uh, that served looks like it was probably went online active in 1943 and served to 1946. They would generally have a yearbook, an annual, if you will, that would document that unit's activities through the course of their service. Um, in many cases, I think that's still done today. I know I've seen um, uh, a cruise book or a service annual for aircraft carriers from the 60s and 70s, where they detail where they cruise during their, 1 or 2 year cruise, all their ports of call. In the case of the aircraft carrier, the different aviation units that were on board, and it details and has pictures of the servicemen, very much like a high school yearbook, and the officers and enlisted personnel, and will give fun photos and action photos, if you will, um, of those what those units have done or what's daily life like or what's leisure time like on board ship. Or in the case of the bomb group, it might have shown what they did for leisure or um, during the course of the missions that they flew. They're a great source of information, and they're hard to come by. I will say that they're very hard to come by a lot of times. They're splendid source of information, honestly. When I find them in an antique store or something, I usually always try to buy them if I can afford them because they're just too cool. Um, in fact, I've got one sitting here at my desk for a World War One unit, the 81st Infantry Wildcat Division. Oh, I'm sorry, that's World War Two. Yeah, 81st Infantry Wildcat Division in World War Two. I have seen a World War One unit one before, and a lot of times the training units, the training camps, each cadre of soldiers that have passed through a fort or a training camp will also have a yearbook or an annual. In this case, which I can't see, as I'm holding my hands a yearbook. Um, I'm just calling it a yearbook, but it's the Fort Jackson, South Carolina from 1952. Um, and it's a training. Let's see it's the 8th Infantry Division. and it's going through, and it was stationed at Fort Jackson, South Carolina, and it's going through all of their activities, training, and then it has the pages of the different companies, um, and all the different service personnel, very much like a yearbook laid out. So they're really cool. Okay. Is anybody want to try a family name if they want to throw it in the chat or the Q&A, and we've got a little bit of time left if y'all got any more questions, or I can just throw in a name and go fish and see what we have. Or I can let's do this one while we're waiting on someone to talk or type.
We did get a name in the chat.
Oh, okay.
Ralph Stevenson.
Okay, let me do that. It's fun to look up generals too, and because there's a lot of information that they have, because they usually have a lot of letters.
Ralph Wilson Stevenson.
Oh, Ralph Wilson Stevenson. Okay. So you've got one from Wisconsin and one from Louisiana, it looks like, both for Second World War. But like I said, you've got over here on the left-hand column, Louisiana. Okay. So you've got page 1 here from Gina, LaSalle Parish. Oh, that's as small as it'll let me make it. So in this case, yeah, I got place of birth, age, their telephone number, a 3-digit number. How about that, y'all? Um, and then it gives, it has a place on this. What was this? This was the draft registration card. So a place, name of and address of the person who will always know your address. And since that's Mrs. Ralph Stevenson, presumably that's his wife. There was a page 2, wasn't it? Let's go back. How do you just get to page 2? Oh, there we go. Those little arrows down here at the bottom. So here you got a simple little table of physical description. So some interesting information. Looks like registered in 1942. And then I see another.
We did get
Another.
another search request in the Q&A.
All right, let me get back here. And just zero that out. And let's see. And notice I'm always doing the last name first, first name. Did I mistype something? No. James. There we go. Oh, Revolutionary War. Uh, okay. Here's one, James. Of course, you'll have to know a little bit more details to kind of narrow down and make sure you're looking up your specific relative that you're connecting to the right person, basically. But yeah, here's one from what is it? Pennsylvania? Is that what I saw? Yeah, Pennsylvania veteran card. Shows where they were on duty. Maybe their commanding officer. Oh, North Carolina. Let's see. Can you limit by? Yeah, I have to play around with that just a little bit. Oh, you can do place. Yeah, so you can limit and do by place. Oops. Okay. Don't look at how bad I type, y'all. No, that seemed to give a lot different names than the name looking for. I have to play with that one a little bit and kind of massage the search a little, maybe. Oh, got one more real quick. Let's see. I'm going to just go to 1812 here. Ooh, just two results for that one. Um, both James H. Ooh, got a lot of. All right, so this one's interesting information. So you've got a private, and I'm assuming this means they were a private in Captain McGowan's company, Kentucky Militia. I'm assuming that's what the MIL, possibly. Different residences of the widow. There's the widow's name, when they died, and where. So you got a little information, shows when they were, when they enlisted and when they were discharged. And then here's some information on their bounty land. Yeah, some interesting information. Let's see what some of this rest of this. Oh yeah, you've got a lot more. Widow's pension, service pension. Yeah, you only had two results, but this is 23 pages. So that's actually a pretty interesting one.
We did get
Oh,
a question in the Q&A of what is bounty land?
yeah, so bounty land, um, through different conflicts, use the case of the Revolutionary War, the U.S. Civil War, or the um, Texas Republic period. Um, when soldiers fought, the governments they didn't get a salary. They didn't get paid um, necessarily. Um, so maybe as in lieu of payment, they may have been granted land for their service, or they may have been paid, but ultimately for their service, they may have it became a reward for their service. And so You got bounty land that you could go claim as or your descendants could claim as, or not descendants, but your relatives, living relatives, if you were died in battle, your widow or your next of kin could claim the bounty land um, on your behalf for your service. Um, that's why a lot of times with involved around the military records, like if you go, what a lot of people may not know is that the Texas General Land Office has a pretty decent um, genealogical treasure trove, if you will, of documents and resources as people or their family claim the bounty land. Um, as part of that process and claiming, you or your family member would have to send in proof and documentation showing that, yes, indeed, you did serve for a period of time in the Texas military or whatever unit. And that would be in the form of journals, letters, um, photographs, um, but usually letters from the individual to their family, to their wife, or journals that they kept and sent home, or were returned home with their effects if they died in battle. And that was all part of documentation. That's a lot of that stuff's held in Texas case in the Texas General Land Office. It's fascinating, actually. Hopefully that answers your question. And we thank everybody for joining us. Jess has put up some of our upcoming genealogy programs coming up for the rest of this programming season. Oh, good question. Are these records printable? I'm not 100% certain, so let's take a look at one. You can share it. Yes. So up here at the top, in this case, this War of 1812 document, you can download it or you can print it. You certainly can. So that would help with your research if you wanted to document and keep with your research, keep a copy. Absolutely. All right. Well, that's about time. Does anybody else have any last minute questions for us? Well, we thank you for joining us tonight. Thanks for sharing your time. Hopefully you got something good out of this, and I just encourage you to go play because you're not going to break it. Go explore Fold 3.